rang the bell because I had thought about droughts and floodings, but what really pushed my button was thinking of the earthquake in Mexicali. And when I was really knocked, that were the events of January 3 and 4th were in Sinaloa. Well, everything that happened in the rest of the country, Jalisco, etc. But this is the concentrated part. And this not only affected people, they affected their institutions and their ability to respond. And the main question was, is there not going to be anything more, maybe 100 years from now? And the main issue is that nowadays instruments, technological or commercial or organizational, are not working. They're not working to address these situations. So we have these topics on how we can incorporate producers to financing. I think we don't have enough time. There are more slides, but I think I'll stop here. So if I'm on the subsistence levels, to wrap up, it's hard to go from here to here. It's hard to get a bank, let's say Bancomer, to be interested in a product such as mine. It's hard for a producer here on this stage will venture on risking their heritage. So we should really address the development of qualities, which would lead us to realizing that all of this requires a much bigger assistance. Only 3 or 4 years of preparation, of establishing all the conditions. Then you have the pre-graduates, and this is some kind of tradition where the bank from FIRA, Zagarpa, or Genia could, let's say, bait and see which one of these producers are prepared, where the subsides are lower and where their capacity and potential to grow is higher. And finally, you have integration. I'm not going to talk about this. I would like to comment on this one. This comes from Jalisco. It's a milk farm. These producers with a good ratio of milk per cow, but they had high costs and they almost focused solely on concentrated foods. And their costs were around 4.30, 4.15, and they were selling at 4 pesos. So they were losing. And when I asked a friend how they were doing, he said, well, I got into this program. I have 17 cows, and I want more. But my brother went to the United States and left me 20 more. I begged him not to go because I couldn't even handle my 17 cows. And now I had 20 extra, so I was losing money. And the key issue here is they had a technological offer that, well, starting from the production of silos for feeding, and so the consumption of concentrated food starts dropping. This entailed a reduction of costs, and all of this came from a consultant. But to have a consultant for a certain area is very difficult. So what they did, he was accompanied by other technicians, and today they tend to 23 municipalities. He started in Louvre. They have 36 groups. They have 36 technicians. But a big part, but this all comes from this person who had the capacity and the technological ability to do this. We can see the presence of the municipalities. So this implied not only preparing all the producers, but also preparing more technicians. There weren't any more technicians in this program. The integral analysis, the assessment, the use of soil, the production of forage. You can see producers right over here, and the cost that they have is 280. And let's say that someone owns 20 cows and they produce 15 liters per cow. So that's 300 liters a day. Here he was losing, and on this side, how much is he making extra? So is he producing at 280 and selling at 418? Let's say that this is the price per liter. I don't know where it is. Let's say 138 as a profit times 300 liters a day. How much does he get? Around 500 pesos. So they have the human development and capacities, and that's alright. But without a technological offer, they have nowhere to go. All these conditions should be given. All these producers must be formed in these schools. I think that a technician that knows this business well and that always dreamed of transferring his knowledge, and a functionary, an accountant who had the boldness and who had the guts to say, I'm going on this project. And for a technician who's not working, well, it's time to go. The first thing that you should do is prepare them and tell producers, okay, you know what, I'm gonna meet you at 4 a.m. I'll see you then. And then they can develop what they can do. So when they ask technicians, what are you gonna do now? And they say, well, first of all, they're not used to waking up at 4 a.m. and they thought he was going to fail. Because in case of dairy farms, they can see the results day by day, which does not happen for, with example, corn. And these are the teachings we should all learn from. Thank you very much, everyone, and I'm at your service. Different regions in the country. And the title of our presentation, as you can see, is Water in the Rural Development. Water can be a surplus or a lack of, and both of these sides will bring terrible issues, and we must have different strategies to be able to handle water accordingly. I will present general aspects and some flashes and photographs of specific jobs that have been carried out in different parts of the country. As a sample of what we've been doing, there are many ways of contributing to rural development. Next one, please. We have talked about sustainability, and this is a responsibility that we must all assume. If we all take action, we can all be responsible. If people make decisions for us, we will lose this responsibility. And I think that we should all be aware and spread this awareness of what role we're able to play responsibly to take care of water, to look after the environment, and thinking long term, thinking how is it that what we do can satisfy the needs we have today without compromising this supply for the future generations. And that's what sustainability means. So, generally speaking, this is a definition, a way to present it. We had maybe a more specific definition yesterday, but we have to be aware one another. Like when we manage resources or these resources that people give to us, the best way to ensure their application is surveillance mechanisms that we can oversee the proper application of these resources. Many people say that we behave okay, but if we're looked after, we behave better. So it's important to have these strategies at hand to be responsible and surveillant, especially when managing other people's resources. Okay, so talking about water, practically everything that can be said about this has been said, but I'd like to call special attention to this issue.
Aquí hacemos referencia, digamos, lo que está pasando con
Here
agua
we
y
talk about what's happening
y que
with
la usamos para muchas cosas.
groundwater. This is
Y hay
used
diferentes
for,
grupos que se hacen
this is many
responsables
uses.
de
There are
aprovechar,
groups that identify
extraer, producir,
and extract or conduct and then distribute this water, and how this water is also
nosotros
discharged
hemos planteado
for surface water.
que no hiciéramos tantos, tal vez, eventos sobre agua, sino que
There are
hiciéramos una red, una red
many events on
de
water,
diferentes usuarios, de diferentes
and
expertos,
probably there could be a network of users. And for example, if we have a municipality that requires water for their population,
pero que haya gente también ecólogos,
but there's
biólogos,
also people
de cómo
and agronomists and ecologists that tell us how to work these resources more usefully, because this water should be treated and what this is used for.
nos limitamos a ver solamente lo que nosotros
But sometimes we only limit ourselves to looking at what we're interested, and we don't take responsibility for the other people who are going to use this water that we're discharging. It is necessary to find practical and everyday ways to using water. Many times projects and programs are created which are not applicable to everyday use. People do not have a responsible use over water. Maybe we wish to do something about it, but we take super long showers or we take overtime in the shower. So the main thing is to change people's attitude. This is very complex, and this is why we have to show this to the future generation. They are more susceptible to eco-friendly paradigm. I bet that some of your kids say, "Chill, man, you know you're not consistent with what you say." And this is why we should develop the strategies to change the day-to-day habits in each and every one of us. This is why I make this reference for seeking out development through a sustainable manner. And we're talking about an extreme situation here. This is largely due to human activities, and I mean desertification, as well as droughts. Droughts are a very complex meteorological phenomenon. It's very complex to predict or to describe, and this is caused maybe by it's. We could even compare it to storms. We could see its effect on a global scale and its impact on thousands and millions of people. There are many ways to classify droughts. For example, you could have an agricultural drought where there's not enough water to produce or to harvest. And that's one kind of drought. But you can also have livestock drought when you don't have enough water for your livestock. Or maybe urban drought. And for all of those who live here in this area, we know what problems have been faced in supplying the city with water. So droughts are high impact meteorological phenomena for many regions. And this impact from drought, for example, have caused the creation of technologies to predict it, because the scale in which they're studied are very important. It's very different having studies through meteorological satellites that help you predict what the global effect of El Nino or La Nina will be in the drought, if there will be any more wildfires or issues of this nature. So the scale in which we study these phenomena are very important in order to describe and predict them. And talking about enterprises such as Mr. Cortés, who could not be yesterday, he works with insurance and he has a team of professionals who study particularly this kind of phenomena to be able to predict if there will be drought this year or a lot of water and what the cost of the insurance will be. Hence the importance of studying these aspects. One of the experts on drought is Ignacio Rodriguez, a true genius from Venezuela. Anyway, what I'm saying is that we have people who live in conditions close to the desert, and last year they planted their crops. Of course, they didn't get anything, and they invested in their land and in their seeds, and they were still in debt. So, as I'm saying, this aspect should be considered to see which municipalities have high margination. Okay, so I won't talk about anymore about irrigation, but around 80% of the increase to produce food, out of the 100% that it's going to increase, an 80% should be based on irrigation. Without irrigation, crops will not be possible because there's almost the same land that could be in which food could be grown, but we have to make a better use of technology and resources and a professionalization of these activities, of this productive and entrepreneurial activities in the field. Well, limited water has many reasons. Well, one of them could be that we waste it and we do not treat it properly. And another one could be that there's really no water. We have a lot to do regarding this matter, and different strategies must be developed to lower the impact of these phenomenon or to these shortages of water. Well, as we know, around 20% of the water that's used comes from aquifers. I need not to say how many of these are overexploited, but we must be a lot more responsible. And I think that people have had an increasing awareness due to the fact that they're facing this problem directly, not because they have heard of it or because people have told them about it, but because they're facing it. So this is a very simple graphic on how the population is growing and the plowable land. But instead, the population is growing. This poses a great challenge for us, especially in the topic of water. And this is what we have been doing with some producers. Then I will present a strategy that would be convenient to assume in this country for rural development, taking into account accountability, the water basins. Since deforestation or overexploitation of aquifers will have an effect on the people that live on these basins. Here it's Guanabal in Durango, and for example, here people are growing sunflower and corn, which is a very feasible alternative for deserts. And there's also a chance of doing agriculture through contract, and it also consumes very little water. And so we can look for the development of producers depending of their geographical and their biomes as well. Another of the activities were composts. Instead of buying fertilizer, they produced their own composts, their own manure, Because as I mentioned before, if there's no rainfall, they will not grow anything, and there is this debt that they incur into. And this way they cannot produce their own fertilizer, and it's sustainable in a way. They have created this sense of growing plots, but there are certain mishaps, and working through them is a way of working and collaborating with people. That last picture was manure, and here they are managing in Viesca. Because as I mentioned, they couldn't harvest anything last year, so they're standing in front of the municipalities. In fact, there are some of these people here with us today. Here are some work meetings, and we even produced seeds with them. They didn't have to buy it. They didn't have to buy the corn seeds. And there's still a long way to go, not only regarding manure and seeds, but going as far as the market, how to optimize this market share. Here, for example, this is not agriculture, it's just a graph of production of candelilla, which is also an alternative. They're picking it. This is boogie, or and it's a process that they can resort to when agriculture is not giving enough in situations such as drought. The basin management paradigm. This results as the responsibility of more people involved in a basin. Here, the aspect that we should consider when proposing that people work together, they work thinking based on a basin. This makes people more responsible and aware of other factors that we must interact with in order to maintain the sustainability. We will have a diagnosis of the population in this basis, the water situation, the degree of degradation of this basin, to identify where should we address the attention the most. And now I will present an example of, we don't have an example of a particular basin, but we have basins all throughout the country. And we have standardized techniques and methodologies in order to get this job done. But as I was saying, restoring a basin, it's very expensive. Degrading it, it's very easy, especially on the tropics. And the easiest thing to do is planting grass, having livestock, and then a